Hello, and welcome to The Culture Bar, a panel discussion podcast exploring the arts and music world. In this podcast, ahead of our Foundation Symposium, we wanted to explore the musical landscape of Bristol. To do this, we were joined by Samir Savant from St George's, Bristol, and Doug Bott from Open Up Music to tell us a bit more about their organisations and their experience of music in Bristol. Welcome, everybody, to this podcast where we will be focusing on the musical landscape of Bristol with two of our revered guests. We have Samir Savant, who's the Chief Executive Officer of St George's in Bristol, where we will be hosting the Music Education at Scale Symposium next week. And we're also joined by Doug Bott, who's the Artistic Director of Open Up Music, also based in Bristol, though with national programmes, and they will take us through their reflections and thoughts on the musical landscape of Bristol and what their organisations are currently up to. Take it away.
So I'm Samir, as Lissy said, I'm CEO at St George's Bristol. This year we're celebrating our 200th anniversary because the church, which is the concert hall that is St George's, is 200 years old. So we've been celebrating this year, which has been lovely. And we're a music and spoken word venue in the heart of the city. We have musicians of all genres coming. Just last Friday, we had Jess Gillam, the saxophonist, who's a HarrisonParrott Foundation ambassador. And earlier this season, we also had Léa Joux, a fantastic young violinist who is another HarrisonParrott Foundation ambassador. And we, really exciting place to work. I'm a trained singer, and since I arrived in Bristol just over 2 years ago, I've started Bristol's Festival of Voice, because I keep being told there are more choirs here in Bristol per head than anywhere else in the UK. And that's borne out by the kind of mass participation singing events we've done, and more on that anon. Over to you, Doug.
Hi, I'm Doug Bott. I'm the Artistic Director of Open Up Music, which is a charity based in Bristol, though we work nationally. We have a mission to open up music to young disabled musicians. So we serve young people who would otherwise face barriers to music education. And we do that through 3 programs. So we run the National Open Youth Orchestra, which is a pioneering inclusive orchestra where young disabled and non-disabled musicians get to rehearse and perform together. And that's been going since 2018. And actually our first concert in Bristol, we performed at St George's a couple of years ago, which was a wonderful event. We also run a program called Open Orchestras, which we believe is the biggest community of practice for accessible ensemble music making in the UK, possibly even in the world. We currently work with 60 special educational needs schools around England and Wales. So that's about first access and getting young disabled people in schools, making live music in ensembles. And then we've also developed a wonderful, accessible, inclusive musical instrument called the clarion, which the HarrisonParrott Foundation have wonderfully supported. And this is an instrument which you can play with any part of your body. You can even play it with your eyes using eye gaze technology. And we are very excited that we are kind of gearing up to make that publicly available next year. That's Open Up Music. I always think that it's the kind of organisation that could only ever really have grown out of Bristol, because Bristol is a very singular, unique place which tends to do things a little bit differently. I think it's no accident that the artist Banksy really cut his teeth in Bristol. I don't think that would have happened anywhere else, taking street art and turning it into something completely extraordinarily different from what it was. It's an amazing place, and yeah, I don't think that open up music would have developed anywhere else. There's so much wonderful stuff going on here.
That's amazing. So do you think there's a certain sort of inherent artistic quality to Bristol, or do you think it's a place, just a hotbed for innovators? Like, what do you think it is about Bristol that sort of makes it such a brilliant place for musical organisations to thrive?
I think, yeah, you mentioned the word innovators. There's definitely an innovative streak in Bristol. You might even go so far as to say that it's a bit rebellious. I think artists and organisations in Bristol tend to go a little bit against the grain in terms of how things get set up. I mean, the Parrott Orchestra is also based here. And that was a decision which they took. They decided to be based in Bristol because it has this unique, slightly rebellious spirit. So, yeah, it probably goes back to something in Bristol's history. I'm not a good enough historian to know exactly what that might be. Others might have better solutions. But yeah, there's something in the water here.
I agree. There is definitely something in the water, and having only moved here just over 2 years ago, I'm very conscious of the differences between Bristol and other cities where I've lived in the UK. But to the history point, alongside St George's being 200 years old, the building, Bristol is 650 years old as a city. So it's been fiercely independent since the reign of Edward III, who granted the city charter to us. So Bristol has been, it's a city and a county all by itself. And it's really annoying when you have to fill in those address things and it's insisting that you give a county, because they never have the option of Bristol being a county. You either have to be in Gloucestershire or Somerset, and that's not the truth. And in history, whether it's kind of the repeal of the Corn Laws or the abolition of slavery, Bristol's always been right in there, politically active city. The citizens are all very politically active, politically engaged. And also, I think it's the scale of the city, because it's 500,000 people. And compared to much bigger cities like Birmingham or London, things get done. I mean, people know each other. I always joke, for dinner you have to be super nice to everyone you meet, because you can guarantee that they'll be behind you in the queue at Sainsbury's a week later. That just doesn't happen in bigger cities. So there is a sense of connectivity and a sense of civic pride in Bristol that I've not encountered in other cities where I've lived.
That's lovely, and maybe touches on a point that we want to discuss of kind of musical or artistic communities and how that plays such a big role in kind of, I think, the success of music organisations is when you have that sense of community and belonging and sort of that shared identity.
Leaping in here, actually, I think Bristol is the only city in the UK, or one of very few, where one of the very large music venues, so Bristol Beacon, which will reopen on the 30th of November, is also the Bristol the music education hub. And having a professional concert venue, which is very kind of inclusive and welcoming in the community, also running all those education services. I think that's it's unique, if not the only one example. Doug, you might know better than me.
No, I think you're absolutely right. And I think the way in which Bristol Beacon as a music hub has worked since the advent of the National Plan for Music Education in 2012 is really great, really commendable. They were hugely supportive in the development of my organisation, Open Up Music, which has now been going for about 8-9 years. They gave us a room in their music centre as our first office, gave us lots of introductions and a real boost as a small organisation, which of course is exactly what music hubs are set up to do. They're set up to connect music organisations together in partnership. And of course, I know that Bristol Beacon and St George's have a very particular relationship, a very close working relationship as well. So yeah, there's a great sense of community, shared responsibility, shared mission, I think, across the music sector in Bristol. in terms of education and the music industry more widely, which is one of the things that I love about living and working here.
And I was talking about kind of the mass participation singing projects that we've been doing at St George's and the Festival of Voice. I mean, in my first year here, we started Festival of Voice, and already in that first year, we did a flash mob Hallelujah chorus for the Platinum Jubilee, which involved several hundred singers. And then earlier this year, we did a Sing for the King project with 650 singers as part of Bristol 650, blasting out Zadok the Priest with City of Bristol Brass Band in Bristol Cathedral. Which is just amazing. And next year we're launching a Sing for Happiness project, which will involve hopefully up to 1,000 singers, both in person and online. And alongside getting together to sing, we're running a kind of a study into the impact of singing on mental health, together with our colleague Kat Branch, who runs the Centre for Music at UWE and is one of the key speakers at the symposium on the 29th of November, and is also a St George's trustee. So, so much interconnection going on. And I have, people say to me that there are more choirs per head of population in Bristol. I don't know whether it's true, and I don't know why it should be, but we do now have 150 plus choirs in Bristol, Bath and beyond on our database for Festival of Voice at St George's, and the choir leaders get together regularly every month here at St George's. So there is definitely a massive singing community out there. I think it's something to do with Bristol being a very cosmopolitan city, being a trading city and inviting a lot of people in over many, many centuries. And also the kind of singing tradition, the combination of the kind of Somerset, Gloucestershire folk singing traditions, sea shanties, throw that in as well. So I think it's just created this great fertile ground for song.
That is amazing. 150 choirs. Utterly extraordinary. So what do we have to look forward to in the coming months from both Open Up Music and St George's?
So for Open Up Music, we have a concert tour by the National Open Youth Orchestra coming up in April and May next year. So we're going to be playing 4 concerts, one in Bristol, which will be at the newly opened Bristol Beacon, following on from our St George's concert a couple of years ago. We'll also be playing at Birmingham Town Hall and at Milton Court in London and at the Lighthouse and Pool. And that's just a crucial part of our mission to give a platform for talented young disabled musicians, and also to really raise aspirations among audiences about what young disabled musicians can achieve. And I think this is a key part of the slightly rebellious spirit that Bristol encapsulates for me, is that this slightly audacious idea, which so many people were unsure about, let's say, when we first came up with the idea of the National Open Youth Orchestra. It's a very challenging and adventurous undertaking. That's why I was saying I think Bristol's the kind of place where this idea needed to take root, and accessibility in general is something, of course, that my organisation, Open Up Music, is passionate about, and Bristol in general as well. So there are so many Bristol venues that have invested huge amounts in access in recent years, not least St George's, and also the Bristol Old Vic Theatre, and of course the Bristol Beacon, which has placed accessibility for its audiences and its performers, at the heart of the relaunch and the opening. And then, as I said, of course, the Parrott Orchestra being based here as a pioneering orchestra, which very much like the National Open Youth Orchestra mixes conventional acoustic and electronic instruments. So much of it is about reinventing and reimagining what an orchestra can be in future. And all of that has fertile ground to flourish here in Bristol.
It's really exciting to hear of all your plans, Doug, and I'm both of us, I'm sure we're looking forward to the reopening of Bristol Beacon on the 30th of November, which involves the Parrott Orchestra and also Limbic Cinema. It's going to be a great night. St George's, well, we've got a really busy Christmas. It's no surprise, really. We work a lot with the local leisure time orchestras and choirs. They're all piling in to do their Christmas concerts. Bristol is also the UNESCO City of Film, and Aardman Animations are based here. So film plays an important part in our Christmas celebrations. So we've got City of Bristol Brass Band giving performances of The Snowman for family audiences, and Bristol Ensemble, who are our local professional chamber orchestra, doing Shaun the Sheep, the Aardman animation Shaun the Sheep, which would be great. And my own choir, the Fitzharding Consort, we were down to give one Carols by Candlelight performance, and it's already sold out. So now we're giving a second by popular demand. So big Christmas plans. And also I just wanted to highlight 3 performers that are coming next year, which kind of emphasizes the diversity of the kind of programming here. We've got the wonderful singer Uta Lempa. So excited that she's coming to St George's. We've got the Indian classical flautist Rakesh Chaurasia. Again, I'm of Indian heritage myself, so I grew up having Indian classical music lessons alongside Western singing lessons, so I'm really excited about that. And finally, the Academy of Ancient Music are coming, the first time they've played at St George's, with the African-American countertenor Reginald Mobley, who's going to do a really varied programme of George Frederick Handel, Henry Purcell, and also Ignatius Sancho, who was a contemporary of Handel's and Purcell's. He was born a slave and freed, and came to this country and was a polymath. He was a writer, he was an advocate for the emancipation of slaves, and so very politically active, and he was a composer. So Reginald Mobley is going to sing some of his works alongside a contemporary reimagining by Roderick Williams as well. So that's in late May. Really excited about that.
Samir, that sounds incredible. In fact, both of you sound like got amazing things going on. I feel like that was a beautiful whistle-stop tour of both of your organisations, how they are knitted into the cultural landscape at Bristol, and a lot of exciting things to come. So that leaves me, I think, to invite anybody listening to join us at the symposium next week, 29th of November, 2 till 6 p.m. at St George's, where you can hear even more from both Samir and Doug, who will both be key speakers at the event. So thank you very much indeed. That is it for this episode of the Culture Bar podcast. We hope you enjoyed it. I'd like to thank Samir and Doug for joining us for this particular podcast, and you can visit stgeorgesbristol.co.uk and openupmusic.org for more information.